Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a total classic, the Asch Experiment, the hidden truth about conformity. We're going to uncover that intense, kind of silent struggle we all face every single day between fitting in and standing out. And more importantly, we're diving deep into what the actual data says, moving way past the textbook myths to find a surprisingly empowering truth.
So would you doubt your own eyes just to fit in with the crowd? Take a second to really think about that. I mean, imagine sitting in a room where literally everyone around you confidently states an answer that is so obviously, glaringly wrong. The truth is right there in front of you, but the entire room is against you. Would you hold your ground, or would you cave? Today we'll discover exactly how social pressure attempts to hack our minds. All right, the classic 1951 experiment. Let's travel back to Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. Psychologist Solomon Asch invited students to participate in what he claimed was just a simple, straightforward vision test. But, it wasn't a vision test at all. It was actually this meticulously crafted setup, a sort of psychological theater designed to measure the invisible, raw power of social influence.
So here is how the trap was sprung. Step 1. Asch places a single naive participant, the only real subject, in a room with 7 Confederates, essentially actors who are in on the whole thing. The real participant is strategically placed to answer second to last. Step 2. They're asked to match a target line to 3 comparison lines. For the first few rounds, the actors give the obviously correct answer, which builds up this false sense of trust. But then, Step 3. Without warning, the actors switch. They start giving unanimous, clearly incorrect answers. Suddenly, our participant is a minority of 1, facing a super confident but completely wrong majority. Just imagine the sheer awkward confusion in that room.
Now, the initial surface-level findings. Absolutely shocking. 32%. On average, participants conformed to the clearly incorrect majority 32% of the time. Think about the gravity of that for a second. Roughly a third of the time, everyday people were perfectly willing to look at a short line and literally call it long just because the rest of the room said so. They basically abandoned their own objective reality. And man, it gets even more startling. 75%. Fully 75% of participants went along with the group's wrong answer at least once over the course of the experiment. For decades, psychology textbooks have leaned heavily on these specific numbers to paint a pretty grim picture of human nature, labeling us as these passive followers who just blindly conform the second things get uncomfortable.
But here's where we pivot to the hidden truth: independence. This is where it gets incredibly fascinating. Because that popular textbook version of Asch's study, it's actually incomplete. It leaves out a massive, highly significant finding that fundamentally flips how we should look at this. The real legacy isn't just a depressing story about conformity. It's about the remarkable, and honestly often ignored, hidden truth of human independence. Check out this quote, because this is the data point that changes everything. 25% of participants never conformed, not even once. Despite facing a unanimous majority confidently stating an obvious lie, round after round, a full quarter of the participants completely resisted that artificial social pressure. Across all the trials, they trusted their own eyes every single time. And actually, if you look at the total aggregate responses, participants gave the correct answer roughly 2/3 of the time. So the majority of the time, the truth actually won out.
This brilliantly shifts the entire paradigm. Look at the comparison here. The textbook myth tells us humans are mindless sheep who blindly conform. But the actual finding? Humans experience intense, agonizing psychological conflict under social pressure, yet they very often actively resist it. Asch's study is a profound testament to our capacity for independence. It proves our drive to stand by the truth is just as deeply ingrained as our desire to fit in.
Right, so why do we yield? We obviously can't ignore the conformity that did happen. So what drove the people who did cave? Well, Asch didn't just record wrong answers. He conducted rigorous post-experiment interviews to figure out exactly what was going through their heads. And he found out that people didn't all conform for the same reasons. It's actually incredibly nuanced.
Through those interviews, he discovered 3 distinct levels of yielding. First, perceptual. This was super rare, but a few participants truly believed their perception had physically altered to match the group. Second, judgmental. They saw the difference clearly, but doubted their own reasoning, figuring the majority had to be right. And third, action. This is by far the most common. These folks knew the absolute truth. Their eyes worked perfectly, but they intentionally suppressed the right answer just to fit in.
Which brings us to normative social influence. This is when you conform to be accepted or liked by a group, often to avoid ridicule or social exclusion. Most of those who yielded at that action level did so entirely because of this. They simply feared the awkwardness and rejection that would instantly follow if they disrupted the room. It's that powerful, very human fear of social awkwardness dictating our actions.
On the flip side, we have informational social influence. This is conforming because you genuinely believe others have more accurate or valuable information. This is what hit the judgmental folks. If 7 people in a row confidently say line B is the match, you might genuinely start to second-guess your own eyesight, right? Logically assuming a unanimous group couldn't possibly all be making the exact same mistake?
Moving on to the variables of social pressure. Asch didn't just stop at the baseline experiment. He really wanted to understand the precise mechanics of this pressure. What levers could he pull to make it stronger or weaker? So he systematically tweaked the setup to identify the exact situational factors behind these biases in human judgment.
As you can see, group size matters immensely, but only up to a point. With one confederate, conformity is practically non-existent at just 3%. Facing 2 confederates, it jumps to 13%. But with 3 confederates, conformity hits that critical 32% mark, and interestingly, it plateaus right there. Adding 4, 5, or even 10 more actors didn't significantly increase the pressure. The psychological wall was already built at 3.
But get this next finding is probably the most uplifting part of the whole study: the power of one ally. A single dissenting voice reduces conformity by up to 80%. Asch found that if he broke the group's unanimity with just one allied actor, even if that actor gave a completely different wrong answer, it instantly burst the bubble of social pressure. It mathematically proves how absolutely vital dissenting voices are.
So that brings us to culture and modern conformity. Asch's original work was in 1950s America, a very specific time and place. So you have to wonder, how do these baseline psychological findings hold up across different global environments or, in our modern contexts today?
Well, culture plays an absolutely massive role. Cross-cultural research shows that in collectivist cultures, which really value group harmony and interdependence, conformity is more pronounced. It's actually a tool to maintain social cohesion. But in individualistic cultures that value autonomy and self-expression, conformity is way less pronounced and much more context-specific.
Societal norms essentially dictate our baseline behavior. In some cultures, conformity isn't a weakness, it's a broad expectation vital for survival. In others, it's a highly localized choice. So while the invisible pressure of the crowd is a totally universal human experience, exactly how we're conditioned to respond to it is deeply shaped by our cultural background.
And what about today? Modern replications have given us some wild updates. When researchers offered monetary incentives for correct answers, errors dropped but only to 25%, meaning people literally left free cash on the table just to avoid standing out. Also, when applied to complex political opinions, there was still a highly significant 38% conformity rate. So social pressure is definitely still robust today. Oh, and interestingly, people who score high in the personality trait of openness are inversely related to conformity. They're far less likely to cave.
So here is the real legacy. We feel the pressure, but we can choose to resist. The ultimate takeaway from all this research is profound. Yes, social pressure is an undeniable, universal force. It acts on every single one of us. But exactly like that heroic 25% of absolute nonconformists proved back in 1951, we possess this remarkable, built-in ability to maintain our independence, even when it's incredibly uncomfortable.
I'll leave you with this final question. Knowing that 25% of people never conformed, will you find it easier to trust your own eyes? Think about that the next time you find yourself entirely in the minority, in a meeting, a classroom, wherever. Now that you know the hidden truth of the Asch experiment, when the entire room turns against you, are you going to confidently stand your ground?